This is going to be our last set of notes for Chapter 1 before our Chapter 1 test. So today we are doing 1.4, which is going to be rewriting equations. So let's dive into this. This is our warm-up. So this rectangle has a special property. Its area is equal to its perimeter. Find the width of the rectangle. So from what it says up here, I know that the perimeter is equal to its area. So that's what I'm going to write. Area equals perimeter. Now I have to ask myself what those formulas are for area and perimeter. I know area is going to be my length times my width. So that's what I'm going to write. Length times width. I know perimeter is all the sides added up. So we have two width sides. So 1, 2, and we have two lengths. 1, 2. Our goal is to find the width of the rectangle. We're trying to figure out what that W is. So I'm going to substitute in what I know. So I know that this is going to be filled in for my length, and I know that is going to be filled in for my width. So anytime I see an L, I'm writing a 5. Anytime I see a W, I'm going to keep it a W. So I'm just rewriting the rest of my equation. And then remember to put things in parentheses so you don't get confused. So we had our original formula written out. Now we have our substitution step written out. And now we're going to go through and solve it. So the first thing that I can do is do 2 times 5. So that's what I'm going to start with. So I've got 5W equals 2W plus 10. And now it looks like a formula that we would have had when we were simplifying equations with variables on both sides. So I always like moving the smaller one or moving the side that has more junk on it. So this side has more junk, so I'm going to move that 2W over to the other side. To move it, I have to either choose addition or subtraction, since I'm moving that entire thing. Since this is a positive 2, I chose my subtraction. And so that gets rid of that because 2 minus 2 is going to give me a 0. So I don't have any W's over there, so I'm going to bring down the 10 on that right side. On the left side, I've got 5 minus 2, which gives me a 3, and I keep my W. From here, we have to get that W by itself. Our goal is to get W equals some number. To get W by itself, I have to remove that 3 from it. It's being held to that W with multiplication, so we're going to have to do division to get rid of it. So I'm going to divide on both sides by 3. That gets rid of that and leaves me with my W, which was my goal. On the right side, I am left with a 10 divided by 3, and I'm going to keep it in that fraction form. And that's going to be my final answer. You try this problem. So you can go back and pause the video of all of my work from that last problem so you can have it right there in front of you. But instead of using a 5, this time you're using a 3. So go ahead and pause the video. You can always rewind it so you can look at that last problem, and then go ahead and check your answer once you have it solved. And you should have ended up with W equals 6. So our width is 6 for this problem. And you can check your work against mine. So for this problem here, we need to create an equation to represent the perimeter of the following rectangle. So if we think to what we said before, I know that perimeter equals 2 of my lengths and 2 of my widths. So now that I have the equation written out, I'm just going to be substituting those numbers in. So I'm plugging in a 19 for my p because those are equal to each other. So instead of writing that p, I'm going to write 19. And that's going to be equal to 2 times my length. My length is going to be this 5.5. So that's what I'm going to substitute in there, 5.5. And then it's plus 2w. I don't have a number for w. That's actually what we're going to be solving for. So that's going to stay my variable. From there, I'm going to simplify and solve. So this is going to end up being a two-step equation since I only have one variable right now. First thing I'm going to do is 2 times 5.5, which I know is 11. And then I'm going to rewrite the rest of my problem. After that, I have to do my addition subtraction first, so I want to get rid of that 11 on this side because my goal is to isolate my variable. At the very end, I should have w equals. So I need to get rid of this 11 and this 2, and the 11 just goes first. So since it's a positive 11, I'm going to be subtracting 11 from both sides. 19 minus 11 leaves me with an 8, and then I'm going to be bringing down my 2w. Again, my goal is to get the variable by itself, so I have to take that 2 away from the w. Since there's multiplication happening between the two, I'm going to be doing division. So I'm dividing by 2 on both sides, which gets rid of that on the right, and leaves me with my w, which was my goal. 8 divided by 2 is going to leave me with a 4, so I know my answer is going to be w equals 4. So that w is equal to 4 inches because everything's written in inches. And that's my final answer for this problem. So I want you to keep this problem in mind while we move on to our next step. So formulas are just general equations. They only use letters, but they're still equations. So when we're thinking back to that problem that we just solved, we started out with our P equals 2L plus 2W. This is an equation. We have a ton of variables here. And in this problem, we were actually able to substitute some of those variables with our numbers, which really helped us out and helped us be able to see how to solve this equation. In this lesson, though, we're going to be keeping our variables. So I'm not giving you numbers to substitute into those variables, but the steps are exactly the same. So if I asked you to solve this equation for W when we don't know what P or L are, we're going to do the exact same thing for the most part. We're solving for that W. So from this general equation, I'm drawing my line and I have my variables circled. My end should be W equals, and then everything else over on that left side. We're going through the exact same steps. This ended up being, I think, an 11, and we subtracted that 11. So we don't have that number 11, but we do have a 2L. So we're going to just subtract that 2L from both sides, just like how we did before. And that leaves me with P minus 2L. I can't do anything with that. So all I'm going to do is just rewrite it. Honestly, I think that this section is easier than actually solving problems because you don't have to do the math. All you have to do is say, eventually, when I have these numbers, I'm going to take whatever I get for P minus 2 times whatever I get for L. We're going to keep going with this. So if you think back to what we did before, our goal is to get W by itself. We're multiplying that W by 2 up here. So to get rid of that, we just have to divide by 2. And whatever we do to one side, we have to do the other. We get rid of that. I can't take any 2 divided by anything here. So that's it. That is my final answer. So P minus 2L divided by 2. That's my final answer. So these kinds of problems just require you to know how to move these things around. You don't actually have to do hardly any math for it. You're just saying the steps that you would be taking if you had all the numbers filled out. So let's move on and try a couple more of these problems. So this is the same formula. Let's just solve this formula for L instead of for W. So again, I'm going to draw my line. My variable's already circled, and that's telling me what I'm solving for. So I should get an L equals at the end. I want to take care of my addition subtraction first. So I'm asking myself what's being added or subtracted to this L variable, and it's my 2W. So that is a positive 2W or a plus 2W. So I'm going to be subtracting 2W from both sides of my equation. That goes away and leaves me with a 2L. And then I can't do anything, so I'm just going to rewrite it. Next, we have to get L by itself. That 2 is still being held on by to that L by multiplication, so we're going to have to do division on both sides. We're dividing both sides by 2 to get rid of that. I can't do any division there, so that's just going to be my final answer. P minus 2W divided by 2. And that's it. I want you to try this problem here. So we're going to be solving for h. Make sure you're circling your target variable and moving everything else away. Think about how these other variables are interacting with our h. Is it addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division? And do the opposite to remove them. So pause your video, try it out. You might not get it 100%, but at least you're putting through the effort. And here's my final answer. So V divided by L times W equals H. So what I did was I noticed that L, W, and H were all being multiplied by each other. In order to get rid of multiplication, I have to do division. So I divided by L to get rid of the L, and I divided by W to get rid of the W. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other, and that's how I ended up with my final equation. This time, we're going to be solving for D. So try this one here. Think about how that T is interacting with the D and do the opposite to both sides. So pause your screen now and try this problem. And this is my final equation. So T times S equals D. Because it's division on that right side, the opposite of division is going to be multiplication, so I have to multiply by T on both sides. This problem says, what if it's not a formula, but just an equation? And you're going to be solving for y. So this looks very similar to what we did at the beginning of this lesson when we were working with our perimeters. So I want you to try this out. Think back to the perimeter problem, and then I'll give you your answer after you have attempted this problem. So pause your video now. And this is my final answer. So y equals -5 over 2x plus 3. And there's a very specific reason why I wrote it this way. So let's go through the problem first, and I'll explain my logic every step of the way. So we're solving this equation for y. I always have to get rid of my addition subtraction first, so that 5x is being added to my variable y. So I had to subtract it on both sides. Technically, if you wrote 6 minus 5x, you are 100% correct. And that's how I would typically write it. But this would make more sense in the future, so just keep this in mind that you might not understand why I'm doing this fully right now, but this is going to save you so much time and confusion in the future if you just get in the habit of writing it this way. So this is how we write equations in order to graph them properly. So we always have our y first. I don't know if you guys remember from 7th grade, but we use the equation y equals mx plus b. And so that m is represented right here, and our b is represented right there. Again, this is going to be making more sense in the future. I just want you to get in the habit of writing your equation this way so it doesn't cause you pain in the future. So that's why I wrote my x first. So I've got negative 5x plus 6. I brought down my 2y, and I know that I have to get rid of that 2 to get y by itself. So I'm going to be dividing by 2 on both sides. I divided every single term by 2. So since this is separated by an addition or a subtraction sign, we've got one term here and another term there. So I took the left side and divided it by 2, and then I took negative 5 and divided it by 2, and then I took 6 and divided it by 2. That allows me to simplify the equation a little bit more, because instead of it just being all divided by 2, I know that 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3, which helps me solve that equation. And again, in the future, when we're going to be using this y equals mx plus b formula, this is really going to help us out. So that's going to be my final answer. Honestly, if you have y equals, what would it be, 6 minus 5x divided by 2 written, you did this lesson perfectly fine for this chapter. I'm just trying to prepare you a little bit better for the future. Using your new knowledge, try to write this problem the same way that I had it written before, in the format y equals mx plus b. So rewrite this equation here in that format. So pause the video now and try that out. And here's my final answer. So I saw that that 9x was being subtracted, so I know I have to add it to both sides. So that gives me 3y equals 9x plus 3. Now I have to get rid of my 3. So I see multiplication happening, so I'm going to do the opposite, which is division. So I'm dividing every single term by 3. 3 divided by 3 gives me a 1, which gets rid of those because 1 times y leaves me with my y. 9 divided by 3 leaves me with 3, and I keep my x. 3 divided by 3, like before, gives me a 1, and I'm going to write that 1 so it stays there. So it's being represented. And so my final equation is y equals 3x plus 1. And here's your homework for the day. So you've got one problem on page 24, and that is number 33. And I'm asking you to also explain your answer. So the problem doesn't say to explain your answer, but I'm asking you to. And then you're going to move on to pages 30 and 31 and complete these problems here. I'm going to be 100% honest with you, since you made it this far in the video, this kind of a problem is going to be on your test. Your test is on, I think, Friday. So make sure that you know and understand how to do this problem. I believe it is problem 13 is also something that is very, very similar to something on your test. So all these problems are really great. They're all going to be close to on your test, but 33 and 13 especially, pay closer attention to so you know exactly how to do it if I give you a problem that's similar to it.